And do you have a title for your speech?
Not really, because the book is, as you'll hear, Tuesdays with Maury. It's just an interpretive read.
Okay. Well, you're very welcome, and I look forward to hearing from you.
Is that okay? Madam Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, and welcome guests. Maybe it was a grandparent, a teacher, an adult, a metal, so to speak, that took an interest in you as a child and helped you see the world as a more profound place, and gave you guidance and advice on how to get through it. For Mitch Albom, it was Maury Schwartz, his professor from 20 years before, that guided him and did that for him. The book is called Tuesdays with Maury, and I am going to read for you now the chapter that deals with their reunion. I look back sometimes at the person, excuse me. Orientation. As I turned the rental car onto Maury Street in West Newton, a quiet suburb of Boston, I had a cup of coffee in one hand and a cellular phone between my ear and my shoulder. I was talking to a TV producer about a piece we were doing. My eyes jumped from the digital clock. My return flight was in a few hours to the mailbox numbers on the tree-lined suburban street. The car radio was on, the old news station. This was how I operated, 5 things at once. Roll back the tape, I said to the producer. Let me hear that again. Okay, he said, it's going to take a second. Suddenly, I was upon the house. I pushed the brakes, spilling coffee in my lap. As the car stopped, I caught a glimpse of a large Japanese maple tree and 3 figures standing near it. A young man, a middle-aged woman, and an elderly man sitting in a wheelchair, Maury. At the sight of my old professor, I froze. Hello, the producer said in my ear. Did I lose you? I had not seen him in 16 years. His hair was thinner, nearly white, and his face was gaunt. I suddenly felt unprepared for this reunion. For one thing, I was stuck on the phone, and I hoped that he hadn't noticed my arrival so that I could drive around the block a few more times, finish my business, get mentally ready. But Maury, this new, withered version of a man I had once known so well, was smiling at the car, hands folded in his lap, waiting for me to emerge. Hey, the producer said again, are you there? For all the time we'd spent together, for all the kindness and patience that Maury had shown me when I was young, I should have dropped the phone and jumped from the car and held him and kissed him hello. Instead, I killed the engine and sunk down off the seat as if I was looking for something. Yeah, I'm here, I whispered, and continued my conversation with the TV producer until we were finished. I did what I had become best at doing. I tended to my work, even while my dying professor waited on his front lawn. I am not proud of this, but that is what I did. Now, 5 minutes later, Maury was hugging me, his thinning hair rubbing against my cheek. I had told him I was searching for my keys. That's what had taken me so long in the car, and I squeezed him tightly as if I could crush my lie. Although the spring sunshine was warm, he wore a windbreaker and his legs were covered by a blanket. He smelled faintly sour, the way people on medication sometimes do. With his face pressed close to mine, I could hear his labored breathing in my ear. My old friend, he whispered, you've come back at last. He rocked against me, not letting go, his hands reaching up for my elbows as I bent over him. I was surprised at such affection after all these years. But then, in the stone walls I had built between my present and my past, I had forgotten how close we once were. I remembered graduation day, the briefcase, his tears of my departure, and I swallowed because I knew deep down that I was no longer the good, gift-bearing student that he remembered. I only hoped that for the next few hours I could fool him. Inside the house, we sat at a walnut dining room table, near a window that looked out on my neighbour's house. Maury first with his wheelchair, trying to get comfortable, as usual he wanted to feed me, and a large Italian woman called Connie came and brought chicken salad and hummus and tabbouleh. She also brought some pills. Maury looked at them and sighed. His eyes were more sunken than I remembered them, and his cheekbones more pronounced. This gave him a harsher, older look. Until he smiled, of course, and then the sagging cheeks gathered up like curtains. "Mitch," he said softly, "you know that I am dying." I knew. All right then. Maury swallowed the pills, put down the paper cup, inhaled deeply and then let it out. "Shall I tell you what it's like?" "What it's like? To die?" "Yes," he said. Although I was unaware of it, our last class had just begun. I look back sometimes at the person I was before I rediscovered my old professor. I want to talk to that person. I want to tell him what to look out for, what mistakes to avoid. I want to tell him to be more open, to ignore the lure of advertised values, to pay attention when your loved ones are speaking as if it were the last time you were going to hear them. Mostly, I want to tell that person to get on an airplane and visit a gentle old man in West Newton, Massachusetts, sooner rather than later, before that old man gets sick and forgets and loses his ability to dance. I know I cannot do this. None of us can undo the past we've done or relive a life already recorded. But if Professor Maury Schwartz taught me anything at all, it was that there is no such thing as too late in life. He was changing until the day he said goodbye. This book was largely Maury's idea. He called it our final thesis. Like the best of work projects, it brought us closer together. And Maury was delighted when several publishers showed an interest in it, even though he died before meeting any of them. The advance money helped pay for Maury's expenses, which were enormous, and for that we were both grateful. The title, by the way, we came up with one day in Maury's office. He liked naming things. He had several ideas, but when I said, "How about Tuesdays with Maury?" he smiled in an almost blushing way, and I knew that was it. After Maury died, I went through boxes of old college material, and I discovered a final paper I had written for one of the classes. It was 20 years old now, and on the front page was my penciled comments scribbled to Maury, and beneath them were his comments scribbled back to me. Mine began, "Dear Coach." His began, "Dear Player." For some reason, each time I read that, I miss him more. Have you ever really had a teacher? One who saw you as a raw but precious thing, a jewel that with wisdom could be polished to a proud shine. If you are lucky enough to find your way to such teachers, you will always find your way back. Sometimes in your own head, sometimes right there alongside them, beside their beds. The last class of my old professor's took place once a week in his home by a window in his study, where he could see a pink hibiscus plant shed its pink flowers. The class met on a Tuesday. No books were required. The subject was life. The teaching goes on.